Former Vice President Mike Pence is ramping up his criticism of his old boss, telling a crowd in Washington this weekend that history will judge former President Donald Trump for his actions on January 6th. He said, "President Trump was wrong. I had no right to overturn the election, and his reckless words endangered my family and everyone at the Capitol that day, and I know that history will hold Donald Trump accountable." Joining us to talk about this, conservative lawyer and usual Trump critic, George Conway, and Republican strategist Alice Stewart. George, let me ask you about what Mike Pence had to say. I mean, obviously, I guess it's stating the obvious, yes, that history will judge Donald Trump.
History will judge him as well, and judge everybody.
All of us.
It's sort of like a truism.
Yeah. But I mean, what do you make of the former vice president's comments? He is sort of steadily ramping up this criticism, and it tees up this, I guess, this question in the Republican Party. Can you run against, I guess, the standard bearer of the Republican Party in this kind of way?
Well, I'm all for him running against the standard bearer of the Republican Party in that way. I mean, he has said this before. He said it before a Federalist Society event in Florida, I think sometime last year. I mean, occasionally he does talk like this, but you have to remember, you know, this is a private party of journalists in Washington, D.C. It's like, that's great. Say it more out there and out in Iowa, out on the campaign trail. Let's see you do that instead of, I mean, I don't think it's a good look for him. I mean, I like journalists as much as anybody in this town, but, you know, saying it at a private dinner like that in white tie just doesn't really cut it, particularly when you're fighting, you know, having to testify about what the illegality that Trump tried to make you engage in. You know, it's just, so that's a bit sort of galling to me. The other thing that's galling about it is, even though I give him enormous credit for doing the right thing on January 6th, it shouldn't have come to that. He had his own moral obligation, personal moral obligation as a candidate on the ballot in 2020 to concede the election weeks before then, at least as soon as the Electoral College, at the very latest, had voted.
Yeah.
And he, you know, he's responsible in that sense for not basically saying, look, we lost. But he was too terrified of Donald Trump to do that.
You know, Alice, that is kind of a forgotten thread in that whole saga. I mean, I remember covering Mike Pence over at the White House during those days, and he just wasn't going out on a limb, and he was being very careful in avoiding criticizing Trump and avoiding the topic of whether or not we won or lost the election. But he's doing it now. What do you make of the timing of this and what he's saying?
Well, this really has always been in Mike Pence's character. He did so back in when he was endorsing Ted Cruz in 2016. He's always been able to keep his powder dry until he's really ready to ready, aim, and fire. And that's clearly what he's doing in this case. And what this tells me does indicate more than likely he's leaning more towards getting into the race. And hats off to him for actually calling a spade, because it is absolutely correct that history will judge Donald Trump for his actions and his responsibility for what happened on January 6th. And it was wrong and reckless. And not only did he endanger the lives of the vice president and his family, every member of Congress, the police officers, those who were there, the journalists on that day. And what I'm hearing out on the road, despite how another network mischaracterizes what happened with the recently released videotapes, voters are responding to the fact that January 6th should not have happened. And I'm speaking with people in Iowa, New Hampshire, and these early states. And Donald Trump's actions on January 6th, his election denying, his tone and tenor ever since he got into the White House, that is going to be a big factor in what happens with him on the campaign trail in 2024. And many voters are not looking favorably on his actions and his responsibility for January 6th.
George, what about what Alice is saying there, that out on the campaign trail there are more Republicans than you would think who are critical of Trump for what happened on January 6th?
Well, I haven't been out there the way Alice has, but I'm glad to hear that.
Yeah.
On the other hand, the problem is that he's got this core base of support, 20, 30, 35%, who knows, who are going to vote for him no matter what. And even if he gets indicted, or especially if he gets indicted, they're going to stick with him. And the way the system is, I'm not going to say rigged, but the way the system is set up, you can win a nomination of the Republican Party without getting a majority of the votes. All you got to do is get a plurality in some states to get all the delegates. So unless it's a one-on-one race against somebody who is ready to go after him hammer and tongue, it's possible that Trump could pull it out. In fact, I think it's fairly likely that Trump will pull it out if it's not a one-on-one race.
Alice, I mean, one of the things, one of the threads that we've been following with Trump over the last several days is obviously what may be happening with the Manhattan DA's office and whether or not he does seek an indictment against Trump for his actions in the Stormy Daniels hush money probe. Do you think that could add to the weight that you're, I guess, picking up on out on the campaign trail, that this will turn off even more Republicans and turn them against the president than perhaps we're picking up on? Or might all these pending indictments amount to, you know, a sort of something that Trump could exploit and put, you know, sort of out there as like they're coming out to get me?
Well, I think we've already seen him already try and portray that he is the victim in all of this, whether it is the Stormy Daniels case or whether it's Mar-a-Lago. And to George's point, his base is going to stick with him. His solid, hardcore base is going to stick with him no matter what. We could have another Access Hollywood tape and they would still stick with him. But where he's running into trouble is the people in the Republican Party outside of his base. And again, I'm talking about a key part of the electorate that he will need in 2024, which is social evangelicals. And speaking with some of them, he's going to be in Iowa this week. Key evangelicals in Iowa say, look, they're thankful for what President Trump did with regard to Supreme Court, with regard to immigration, with regard to safety and security. But what they are frustrated with is his tone and tenor. They're frustrated with his name calling with January 6th. And Bob Vanderplaats, who is the president of the Family Leader, is a key person that you really need. He told me this interesting way he put it. He said, look, Bob Seger has two really great songs. One is Still the One, and one is Turn the Page. And when it comes to Donald Trump, evangelicals do not think Donald Trump is still the one, and they're ready to turn the page.
And George, all these indictments that may be on the horizon, they appear to be on the horizon for Trump. How do you see that playing out?
Again, I think he will be indicted multiple times. He will get bail. He will campaign no matter what, unless he's incarcerated. And even if he's incarcerated, he will stick to he will stick to running for president, and he'll try to foment violence. I just think that's just in his nature. He's going to, you know, he's a malignant narcissist. He's a very unwell man. He will try to take everyone down with him if he can't win.
But does it change the equation?
Does it change the equation?
On the Republican side
again,
for the nomination?
I mean, we both agree, Alice and I, that there's just a certain core of the party that is going to go with him no matter what, and actually might be bound to him more if they think he's being persecuted, and he plays that to the hilt. And again, I mean, it's going to be a question of whether or not somebody can get traction on him one-on-one. But even then, even if they win, even if, like, say, DeSantis got a one-on-one shot against Trump and won, you're going to have 30% of the Republican base at least. A core part of the base is going to be mad. They're going to be unhappy at what happened to their dear leader. And Trump is just singularly destructive, as Tucker Carlson noted in one of his emails. And Trump would take the whole party down by running as a third candidate if he had to. Yeah. This isn't looking. I mean, I like to share Alice's optimism that people are done with Trump and the Republican Party, but I don't think they're going to get rid of him that easily.
Might not be quite yet time to play Turn the Page by Bob Seger. Although great reference there, Alice. Alice and George, thanks so much.
I'm a Seger fan too.
Yeah, I know. It's a great song.
Yeah.
All right, guys. Thanks so much. Appreciate it.